Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Second Act Actors. I'm your host, Dr. Janet McMorty, and I'm still a medical doctor, simultaneously trying to pursue a career in acting. My guest this week is Cynthia Crofoot. Cynthia is an award-winning author and actor. I'm hesitant to say author turned actor, because she is definitely not a turned actor, or... Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Second Act Actors. I'm your host, Dr. Janet McMorty, and I'm still a medical doctor, simultaneously trying to pursue a career in acting. My guest this week is Cynthia Crofoot. Cynthia is an award-winning author and actor. She is still an incredible author, so I'm hesitant to say author turned actor because she does both. She's writing screenplays, she's doing some incredible things in this beautiful, strange, bizarre entertainment industry world that we are trying to live in. Oh, and we have such an incredible conversation, such an incredibly juicy conversation. I'm so excited for you to hear her story. Please enjoy Cynthia Crofoot. How did you get into acting?
Well, if you ask my dad, I was born into it. So when I was little, I was very emotive. I was very, theatrical. And it's funny because when I was young being like young, 9, 10 years old, I would write little scripts and then I would make my friends come and put them on for my mom and dad. And that was like, so I've really always had that artistic, creative drive. I didn't pursue it through university. I did go to university and I got a degree as close to artistic as I could. I got my Bachelor of Science in psychology and crime and deviance, which is basically watching people. And as soon as I graduated, I went and joined a community theater. And I got this tiny little role. It was Officer Pudney in Norm Foster's, I'm not going to remember the name of it now. I can't remember the name. And it's like 4 lines. And I'm sure that when I went on stage, like I was holding one of the, walkie-talkies that the cops I'm sure the antenna was just going. And my brother said later he like squeezed the crap out of the armchair when he knew I was coming on. But I've always been interested in theater, but I've always had a day job, right, to pay the bills. And it's, I say that it's not because, but my parents encouraged me to get a real job, right? Arts was not a real job. Going to an art school was not a real school. They saw that I had that drive, that passion, that from a very young age, but it was go to a real school, get a real degree, get a real job. So I did, but I've always done theater, and then I've always done acting, and I always had that passion. So it was always something that I did on the side. And that doesn't help anybody really, right? Because then you're not putting 100% into your day job. I remember I was working for CIBC, and the president that I was working for, it was actually Intria Corporation. She called me into her office one day and she said, "Do you have a Bachelor of Science degree?" And I said, "Yeah." She says, "Why are you not further ahead in the company? Like, you're smart. You could be wherever you want." And I'm like, I want this. And I've stayed pretty level in my day job because it allows me to pursue acting and to audition. And now I've moved into screenplay writing and, filmmaking. And it's been a journey. I feel that I'm now, these last 4.5 years have kind of set the foundation for the next level of my career. And I'm more and more vested in screenplay writing and filmmaking and acting, and acting to a lesser degree, actually, because you have less control over it. Like it's further from, it's one of the only careers, like my parents always used to say, "You're just picking the easy way out." And I'm like, says what? Like, huh? No, because it's the only career that I can think of where the amount of effort that you put in is not realized in a return, right? So it's been a journey for me. This has been a passion of mine for my entire life, to answer your question. Very long answer to your question. So pretty much my entire life, it's been there, as a hobby, as a part-time career. When I was unemployed, I was struggling to figure out how to make it into more of a career. And it's hard when you're young and you're just starting out. And it was hard for me too, because coming from a theater background and a community theater background, not a formal school, no formal training, I went to acting classes and I sucked. I mean, I was just push the emotion, right? Because that's what you did in community theaters. You went out and you were big and you just pushed the emotion. And for camera and for theater too, you need to find the truth and then play that, right? And it was a learning process, and I still sometimes suffer from imposter syndrome because of that, because I don't have the official training and I don't have the degree, and I'm pretty much just self-taught, I guess. I mean, I've took classes, but yeah.
So take me back to the choice of a psychology degree, because you said something that I love, and it's about people watching. Because that, I think, is so much about acting.
Well, it's everything,
Is
right?
humans. It's everything. Yeah.
If you're a good actor, you're watching and you're listening. And I have an example of that. Not that the people I work with are bad actors, but I remember the last play I did was Jenny's House of Joy, and it was for the Oakville Performing Arts. And I wasn't on stage at the time. I was backstage. I was doing a costume change. But you're always on, right? Like if you are a good solid actor, you're always on, you're always listening. So watching to me doesn't just mean looking at you. It means listening as well, right? Like it, and that's why if you do it right, when you end a play or you end your day on set, you're tired because you've been on, you're watching people's body movements and their shifts and their energies, and you're listening to what they're saying. And for stage, it's super important because that 1 second where someone has dropped their line, you need to be able to say, oh, they're lost. What can I do to pick it up? How can we get it back on track? And I was backstage doing my costume change, still listening to what was going on stage. And I looked at the costume lady and I said, they're lost. And she says, no, they're not. They're fine. And I said, nope, they're lost. Sure enough, like 1001, 1002, 1000, and it's 3 seconds on stage. I don't know if you've done theater,
Oh, I just got,
right? It's
my stomach just went,
forever. And they finally picked it up again and they got going. But that to me is acting, is watching and listening, like full body experience. And so for psychology, it's the same thing. It's listening and watching. And I couldn't go into that field. I it's funny because when I left CIBC, the people I worked for were kind enough to send me to a career counselor who was like the executive level career counselor. And he put me through this entire rigmarole of tests. And he had me read that book, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And we did all of these aptitude tests. And it specifically said, I wasn't suited for an office job, that I would be good for arts, acting, and for psychology. And I purposely didn't go into that because being as an actor, a creative, as an artist, I think we're all very emotive, right? The ability to put ourselves into someone else's situation is what we do, right? And I couldn't do it. I volunteered at a distress line and I thought about going into psychology, but I would take home everything. And I remember sitting down, and it was the same thing with my crime and deviance degree. I went into a police station and I was going to see if I could be like the psychologist on call. And the energy in the police station was like, and I thought, these people look at someone and say, what's wrong with you? And then find out what's right. And I like looking at people and being optimistic and saying, all this is right about you, maybe there's something wrong. And so I made a very conscious decision to not follow that career, because I would be a shell of a person right now. I would have been very good at it, and I'm sure I would have helped a lot of people, but it would have been at too high a cost to myself. So yeah, people
Mm.
watching, I would rather do it for a play or a movie than as a career in psychology or anything.
Well, I think what you're describing is something that I hear all the time from actors, from acting coaches, is empathy, right? Finding the good in someone, in your character, even if they are the villain, right? Because that's how truth comes out, I think.
I maybe not finding the good in people, but I think that even when you're playing a villain, they believe what they're doing. They
Mm.
have, so you can't go in and say, I'm playing a villain and they're bad. You have to go in and say, I'm playing a villain. What do I believe? Like, I believe, so I mean, Charles Manson, he believed he was doing the right thing. Now you have
Yeah.
some characters, I guess, that are like, that just do bad for bad's sake. But I've always, one of the things I learned early on as I was trying to shed my community theater habits was, you know, play the person, because that's who they are, right? Like, don't play the trope, don't play the villain, right? Play the person, because what they're doing is bad. And the situation will always give the character their uh, persona, right? So, and one of the things that was taught to me early on was, if you have a scene where there's a loving, caring father and he walks into a child's room and he puts his hand on his back because the child was upset, and gives him a hug and leaves, you as the audience are like, oh, what a great dad. As the actor, you've played that role. If as the actor you play everything exactly the same, but at the beginning a towel drops from around your waist as you enter the child's room, the audience now says, oh, that's a bad person, right? I know what's
Mm-hmm.
going on there. So you as an actor, and it's a thing that I think young actors really need to grab onto, is you don't play that villain. The situation will dictate crap,
Mm.
right? Just the towel dropping in front of the door. Everything else could be
Yeah.
the same. So I play a villain, and I think that now, as I move to a writer, I'm trying to bring, like, the good thing about writing later in life is that you have this whole foundation as an actor to draw on, right? Like the
Yeah.
character analysis that you've done through your career and the stories. So it's, I think characters are more interesting. Villains definitely are more interesting when you play the person and let the surrounding dialogue or environment dictate what the audience is supposed to feel.
Hmm. I would think that makes the job of an actor so much easier. I think we overcomplicate things a lot. Like you saying that, I'm just like, oh, that's really kind of like a bit of a weight lifted off of my shoulders, and the weight that I put on myself, right? I
Yeah.
think if you can just let that go, I just think that's where some ease can come in. If you can just say, oh, it's like the situation's going to help me here.
Yeah, it's a huge win when you recognize that, because then
Mm.
you're not, it's like you're not playing the situation. As an actor, it's not our job to play a situation. It's not even our job to feed the audience so that they feel a certain way. As an actor, what we're paid to do is to find the truth of the character, the truth of them as a person, and play that, because everything around you will feed into that. Now, if they're an evil person, then yeah, you have to go to some dark places in your thoughts, but they're still a person, right? And they believe in those things. So you don't play, it was like in theater, they always said, don't play the comedy, in a comedy, find the drama, in a drama, find the comedy, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
that's if you play opposites, because if you play a dramatic line dramatically, it reads as false. But if you play a dramatic line just as, a line, a truthful line that's grounded in something inside of you, then the audience is going to shiver, right? They're not going to, it's like playing horror. I can't play horror, right? It's the environment, and it's the situation, and it's all of that stuff. So, yeah.
Tell me about when you decided to pursue more writing. Was there a big career shift? Was there a mindset shift the 4.5 years ago? What happened?
Well, it was leading up to my 50th birthday, so we could say I had a crisis, but we didn't. I had been talking to a friend of mine, a director friend of mine, and I had become, this was before Me Too, this was before all of the shifts that have happened in the industry. And I was frustrated with the fact that women were always mothers and moms and, all of these roles. And my natural hit is strong, like, police officers and lawyers and those strong kind of bitchy, ballsy women. And there were no characters like that. And I thought, okay, well, I want to write a story like that. Like, I want to do a story like that. And originally I wasn't going to write it. I had the concept, I had the idea. And my director friend, he's great because he's not pushy, but he would call me every 6 weeks, and he'd say, how's it going, how's the writing, or how's the thing. And I'm like, I haven't done anything. And so then I started shopping around to find a writer, like a writer who would write my story. And what ended up happening was the story was so set in my mind that I told my director friend, I said, I'm just going to write it myself. I said, because nobody gets these characters now, this world that I've built that I now understand, I want to write it. So first writing gig out of the gate, I wrote a feature film. So I don't think that's what you're supposed to do. I think you're supposed to start with shorts. But I wrote a feature.
Who?
I know, right? I just did what I did. And it was bad, the first draft of anything is bad, but it was done and it was a start. And now, I still have it. I'm still hoping to make it at some point. It's called Bracewater. It was a cop thriller, and it had and this is before female driven features or anything came out. And I was kind of ahead of the curve, but nobody really noticed because I'm still small in my space. But I did that, and then after that, I found I had always liked writing, and I thought, this is good. I like this, so I continued. I wrote several short films, which I made into films, and now I've finished a female-driven Western feature length, and I'm working on a horror, and I'm working on a romance. So I like writing. I keep writing, and what I was saying earlier is, writing for me comes easily once I have an in. But it's finding that, it's like, I don't know if you've ever heard for accents. There's sometimes people, to get into a different accent, they have a keyword, right? Or something that gets them into it. For me, it's the same with writing. If I don't have an in or understand that world, I struggle a lot. And so yesterday, I finally figured out the in for this movie that I'm starting to write now. And so then I was up all night thinking, okay, it's this and it's that and it's kind of this. And for me, it's always going to be about something that I understand. And I grew up watching the X-Files and CSI, and I am a sci-fi kind of cop drama rat. That is my thing, right? And I thought, oh, okay, so the horror has to, that's how I get in. She's got to be a cop or an FBI agent or something like that. So yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so exciting. That feeling of the in, I think, is, you can't describe it if you've never felt it to someone. And it's funny when you said that, I was thinking about the one accent I can do really well is a Mancunian accent. I'm not good at like RP, but a Mancunian accent only when I get that word. And there's a word that as soon as I hear it, and there's a YouTube video and it's a natural Mancunian speaker, and she says something and I can go bink and I can turn it on. And it's so hard to describe to others, but you just hit the nail right on the head. It's like, it's a feeling. It's like it's your soul that gets it.
Yeah, it's easy. And then your whole body says, yep, okay, that's where we are now.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like you're home again. You're like, okay, here we are.
Yeah, and it's easy. I find that with accents too. I can do RP and I can do Southern, but it takes me. I have to find that in, and then once you found the in, then it just kind of just flows from you. So it's the same with writing. I found, and the cool thing about writing is that once you get that in, you get, like, it's a world that you enter, not just a verbal thing. It's a world that you enter and you see it, and it's really a cool. It's like for writers that happens too, and it didn't happen fully for me for Bracewater, but the more I wrote, the more experience I got under my belt writing shorts or features. The last feature that I wrote, the Western, the whole world, like it was like, when you write, it's like watching the movie. So when you stop writing, it's like you've seen the movie. It's a cool experience. So it's the same but the in is the same as an accent, which is the closest that I can describe. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wonder do you think some people are just born that way, where when they write, they visually can see? Like, I think there's some people who that's just a natural, like, I know everyone's brains are different. People think different things, but to have such visual, it just be so dramatically visual.
I think, I don't know that all people are that way. So actors, I think, are visual. Because you have to imagine the environment. You're on set. It's not always like you're going to be given the environment that you're in. So I think that actors are visual. What I've discovered is it's a really unique talent to take the vision in your brain and put it onto a page so that other people get it. Because when you're an actor and you envision the world that you're bringing to life, this character that you're bringing to life, their inner life, that's just you visualizing it. And if the writer hasn't done a good job, you can't like, we've all read bad scripts and you're like, what does that even mean? Like, what? And then you have to, like, suck in your cheeks when you're acting it, because it's not real, right? It's not vivid. It's not based in reality. It's not whatever. So what I've discovered is writers are a visual, and I think that directors, writers, and actors are all visual beings because we're in a visual medium, right? Film is going to be visual. I think that it's a very unique capability to take that vision and put it on a page so that it becomes clear. Because, as you know, like, you can have a storyline in your head, and I've talked to junior writers and I've talked to writers who are just starting out, who've asked me to read some of their stuff, and you get what they're trying to do, but they haven't been able to take it from in here and put it on the page so that it's clear. And so I think that as a writer, it's one thing to write it on the page and be clear. I think the next level, visual or visionary on set, would be the director, because as actors, you do your part in your world, but a director has to see the overarching storyline and understand the story completely. So I think that it's always really good, and a sign of a good director, I think, that they take the time to talk to the writer about the story so that they understand, and that they talk to the actors, because it's like a funnel, right? A reverse funnel. The director has to know the whole thing, and he has to know story arcs and everything, but he's never going to know your particular story arc as an actor as good as you will if you're doing your job properly, right? Because you're going to comb through the whole script and say, what in this script applies to me as my character? What can I glean? Like, does someone say something about me and that means that I'm a bitch? Or does someone say something about me and that means I really have a heart of gold underneath this exterior? So I think that, and you know, some of the directors that I've worked with are really good that way, and they will, before they go to film, they'll talk to the writer. But once the writer hands that off to the director, right, it's really the director's job now, right? So the writer walks away. But then I find a good director will sit with the actors before he films to talk about the character and talk about how does the actor see that character and what have they gleaned from it, so that he can filter that into his story. Or he can say, well, what do you think of this? This is what I thought because of, and you know, you don't always have the time to do that because, you know, time is money, right? But yeah, it's hard for, I think that we're all visionaries, but I think that just for a writer, it's hard for the writer to bring an entire story that's in their brain to a page clearly enough that when someone reads it, they understand it and can see it.
Does that come, like, how does one develop the ability to do that? Like, does it come with training? I know you're self-taught. Does it come with just trying and getting feedback?
Well, you know, it just comes, so there's three things that I think about that. One is, you know, either you have a natural tendency to write or you don't. And either you have a natural ability to write clearly on the page or you don't. And either you're going to finish it or you're not. And the last one is the most important thing, right? Because for me, I finished the first screenplay, and there's so many people, probably better writers than I am, who don't finish it, who don't think that they can do it, who don't get it on the page. But once you've put, for me specifically, I'll say I've always been a good writer. I've always enjoyed writing. Screenplay writing is new to me. I did read a book about it, and then I sat down and did it, right? And the best education for anything is to do it, right? So you sit down and you do it. So I sat down and I wrote the feature, and then I wrote my first short, and then my second short, and then my third short, and then I wrote like 3 other shorts that never got made, and then I decided I wanted to write another feature. And it's the doing that someone told me just a while ago. I was at lunch and they said, get it to 80%. Don't worry about getting it perfect, right? So get it to, because 80% is going to be good enough to get it out there for people to see and talk about. The last 20% can be massaged at any time. So, you know, I think that, I don't think that I think you're born with I think you're born with a passion to either write or not. And I think that some people have an easier time writing a story clearly so that people understand it and so that the world becomes real. But I think that the doing is what makes it better. Like, just if you sit down, it's like anything, right? If you only read a book on acting, you're not going to be as good as someone who never read a book or who never had formal training but just got up and did it all the time, because, you know, that's your best teacher, is just the doing.
Yeah. Has there been anything that has surprised you about the entertainment industry from both an actor viewpoint and a writer?
Oh yeah. What surprises me? It's a tough industry to break into, period, right? And in Canada, it's tougher, I think, than the US. I'm a dual citizen. I've not done a lot in the States, but the difference seems to be the willingness in the States to take a chance on new talent, right? Finding new talent or giving them a shot. I think that in Canada, that's easing up a little bit now, with self-tapes. And I know either you love or you hate self-tapes, but it does allow for junior actors to submit auditions for larger roles, right? But what surprises me most is that the industry in general keeps things very close to their chest, and they keep them very safe. Like, we are a safe country, right? And we're not. So I go out and, when you're told, I don't know if you were ever told this, but as I was an actor, a struggling actor, they're like, oh, you have to go out and you have to make your own stuff. And I'm like, well, okay, well, how do you do that? Like, somebody tell me, how do I do that, right? I don't know. And it really wasn't until I started writing that I was like, oh, okay, so now I'm making my own content, but how does it get made? Okay, well, it doesn't get made unless I fund it. Okay, so now I've funded 3 of my own projects. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody can afford to do that. Now I have a good foundation of writing, acting, and, where do I go from that? Well, then the industry is still very, very pigeonholed in who they look at and who they, who gets the opportunities, who gets the funding. It's a really tough haul. And I watched, there was the video from Jason Alexander, right, that kind of was going through IG, and he's like, well, anybody can make their own movie now. You can make a movie on an iPhone. And I'm like, yeah, okay, but what you need to do is you need to find someone who writes a good script, and then you need to find a free location, and then you need to find someone who actually understands how to edit it together, and then you need someone who can do the music. So yeah, I could take my iPhone out and I could make a movie, but it's not going to look like, my director friend who took an iPhone out and actually made a movie and it looked great. So I think that the thing that people just are very flippant about what they say sometimes. You just got to go and make your own opportunities. Well, yeah, but you know what you have to do first is you have to not pigeonhole yourself, make connections in the industry, build up that social network, because that social currency is then going to be what allows you to make your own opportunities, right? So now you're 2 years into the industry and you've got social currency with directors and composers and people like that. So then you can say, oh, okay, I'm going to do this. Now, the other thing too is that, not that surprises me, but that I think that is allowing this industry to open up a little bit more, is the ability to take courses and do things online. As much as we're all online fatigued, the ability to go to Lyft and say, I want to register for your editing course, and you can do it virtually at home, opens up a lot of opportunity. The ability to audition at home, as much as we want to have casting directors feedback and redirect, allows you to not have to, like for me, travel all the way downtown, find parking, go sit in the waiting room, then get called in. Then I got to drive back home, and all that's time away from my day job. And, the majority of us creatives have a day job that isn't acting or writing screenplays or producing. We're struggling to get to that point where you can say, what is your day job? My day job is I'm a filmmaker. So
how does one develop social currency in this crazy world?
You don't go out looking for it, would be the first thing I would say, right? It's not, because people will see through that. Yes. Listen, I think that we've all met people who are in it for themselves. And when you work with them, you know that they're not doing it because they want to build social currency or build their network. They want to target people who will advance their career. And as soon as you don't help them advance their career, you're kind of lost in the dust. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't be driven to advance your career and become the best you can. But if you want to, you don't go out saying, how can I develop my social currency, right? You go out and you do things and you meet people, and you have to genuinely connect with them and not expect something from them, right? I think the best way is to go out and figure out what you have that you can offer to people, right? So I have scripts. I can offer a script to someone who's trying to get their directing feet wet. Okay, so now we have a little connection, right? You want to work on a script to get your director's reel going. I have a script. Let's see what we can do together. Okay, I know someone who really likes music. They're not into scoring music for TV but or film, but they might, so then I say be genuine in it. Like, don't go out looking for social currency, because that stinks like crap, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then nobody's going to want to, you know, talk to you or do you a favor if you're not genuine. Like, why would you want to help someone who's just, and the other thing is, it can't always be about you getting your social currency. Like, what social currency do you have that you can offer people? Like, that's sometimes the best place to start. But be genuine, lead from your heart is what I say, because the people that I have in my circle right now, and also be patient, because it takes a long time to build connections, and friendships, and like the closest people in my network, and then our friends. I'll finish that thought. The closest people in my network are also friends. But also, what you have to be careful of too with social currency is it's not finite, or it's not infinite, right? It's finite. So you can't get like, I have a great connection with someone who helped me with a film. One time I can ask them for a big favor, right? And then you can't go back again. You just have to go back when you have a project. So now when I have a project that I can say, I can pay you your fee, I go to them, right? So you can't keep, it's like when you do like a GoFundMe campaign and all your friends and family contribute to that first campaign. You can't do a second one and expect them all to contribute again, right? Like, manage your expectations with people. And so I just say, don't be greedy, just be selfless, right? Like, say, what can I do for you? How can I help you? Can I do this? Can I do that? And you'll build connections. And you do that by, COVID didn't help for this, right? But you do it by networking and going to the film festivals and talking to people, and going to classes and going to workshops and just doing all that stuff. It just, and I am the worst networker on the planet. Like, I don't like, my brother could go into a room, have you at ease in 3 seconds, and he'd know like your whole life story. And I go into a room and I'm not incapacitated, but I don't like approaching people, and I don't like talking to people, right? But luckily, I have a friend who does, right? She's great. And so I kind of like, I toddle along behind her, and she's like, "Oh, this is my friend Cynthia. Have you met her?" And so we're a good pair that way, right? So yeah, building your social currency is the same kind of as building your network. It just takes time, and I think it takes you to be genuine, because I also have people that I've worked with who have wronged me, and you don't want to work with those people again. And if you came to me and said, "Do you know a so and so that I could work with?" Well, I'm not going to recommend the people that didn't respect my project as much as their own, right? I'm going to recommend to you maybe someone who's not quite as experienced, but whose whole heart is there, and they're going to come in and they're going to give you 100%. They're going to be a joy to work with, and all of that good stuff. So, yeah.
And in an industry like Canada, where it is so new and small, those people, word gets out fast and furious.
I think that in the entire industry, I don't think that people really understand how small it is, and how much, like, I've talked to people much more established than me, and one of the consistent things that they say is, I will take someone who is pleasant on set, but like slightly less experienced than the person who is the top of their game, but who's grumpy when they come to set, and they're negative, and they're like, well, are we done yet? Or that's not my job. I don't want to do that. Like, it's attitude is a lot. And for sure, this industry, I don't think, for new people for sure, but even some seasoned people don't understand how small it is, and how much word gets around. So, there's no need. I mean, in life, there's no need to be pissy with anybody. So, why do it on set when it's a tense environment to begin with, right?
Yeah. Is there anything you are looking forward to coming up this year?
Oh my good gracious. I am a member of WIFT, the Women in Film and Television, and they had a mentorship application that I submitted to and I was accepted to. So I am super excited about who my mentor is going to be, because that for me is a learning opportunity. And you can learn wherever you go, but to be paired up with someone who is more established and more knowledgeable than you is a huge opportunity. So I think WIFT is kudos to them for putting that together. So I'm super excited about that. I have a short film that I just wrote for a director friend of mine in LA that he's gonna film. So that's fun. I'm trying to find producers for my cop thriller and my Western. So I'm working on that. I have a few other ins with producers for features that I'm writing, a horror and a romance. So I'm excited about that as well. And it's just a lot of, this is the other thing that you learn in this industry is you put a lot of effort into it. It goes back to what I said before. You can't expect necessarily a return on that effort, but you will find that the bigger the foundation you lay down and the more effort you start kind of putting into it, things will happen. And it's not like my dad goes, wow, things are really happening for you. That's great. It seems like all of a sudden, and I'm like, were you around when I was doing all of this work? Right. So so I have a lot of things that I'm super excited about. I'm going to Rain Dance has a 1-day film workshop tomorrow, so I'm going to that. It's actually great. It's 4 segments on. It starts with screenplay writing, and then it goes to producing your film. So it's 4 different segments, which will be really great, with a networking opportunity after that. So, like I said, you go to learn, and then you just see who's there and the connections that you make. And so I have a lot of things that I'm excited about. I just did a couple auditions, so I'm waiting to hear about that. And it's a lot of waiting.
It is a lot of waiting. I should say WIFT stands for Women in Film and Television Toronto. Women in Film and Television, but then the Toronto chapter. I'm assuming. Yeah, that's I'm a member as well too.
Yeah.
And it's I'm hoping maybe next year to apply for the mentorship program, because I saw everyone who was involved this year, and like you were saying, what an incredible opportunity. So highly recommend any female identifying individuals in the Toronto area. It's a great community.
Yeah, I do too. And they have a lot now that we're ramping up from COVID, right? I find a lot of the organizations are starting to ramp up, not only because a lot of people cut down on their employment, like who they had supporting them. So they're ramping up on that. And then they're also ramping up the in-person events that they're hosting. And that, to me, I go back to the networking is really important, right? Because I don't know, I did a bunch of film festivals over the last couple of years, and I'd never done a film festival before. And trying to network and connect with people on Zoom when you had never, it doesn't work. Like, the way that you network and connect is that you bump into someone and you say, oh, hey, hi, how you doing? Like, blah, 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 blah. Which is, with ACTRA, I was a little disappointed this year that they didn't have their fall conference in person, because that's how I've made a lot of connections between conferences, like between workshops. You're sitting outside and you see someone and they're like, oh, hey, I know you, blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, oh yeah. And you just can't do that over a Zoom.
Yeah.
But it's coming. We're equalizing.
It's coming. I know, it's true. It's getting there. It's slow and steady, but I hear what you're saying. It's tricky. It just doesn't feel, I was about to say it doesn't feel as genuine, but that's not true. It just still, well, there is that wall in between people.
Yeah,
like the
exactly.
Screen is, something that puts a barrier between people, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you have any final words of wisdom or advice?
Wisdom or advice?
It's such a bad, awful, horrible question to throw at people at the end.
You know what? I don't know if it's wisdom or advice, but what I've learned is don't pigeonhole yourself, right? Like if you're an actor, think of yourself as a filmmaker, and you're a person who likes to tell stories. And genuinely ask yourself if that's what you like, because if it is, then you can get involved in the film festivals in any capacity, right? You can get involved in communities like Lyft and WIFT and all of those places where you are surrounded by like-minded individuals. If you go to school for film and television or acting or filmmaking, you build your tribe that way.
Mm-hmm.
When you come at it, as most of the people who you have on here, as a second act, it's not your primary thing. You didn't go to school for it. It's not how you're earning an income right now. You need to say, is it what I'm passionate about? Because if every time you have an opportunity to go somewhere, like to a film festival or to a course or to a workshop, if you're saying, oh, I don't want to do that, just give me my audition and let me do that. That's all I want to do. You really have to look at it like and say, there's nothing wrong with only wanting to do your audition, but then you can't complain that you're not building a network and you don't have a tribe and you don't have connections and you're not, like, this industry is a lot about who you know and who knows you. And as actors, it's really a tough slog because you have very little control over when you get cast or why you get cast, right? Because it could be any of a number of reasons that they don't pick you, and any of a number of reasons that they do. And so you really, I think, humility in that respect is really important. But just think about, is it film that I'm passionate about? Like, is it the industry itself that I'm passionate about? And how badly do you want it? Because building the connections to grow your tribe and get your knowledge base increased and, get some social currency that you can give and take. It's about getting out there and meeting people who are like-minded and who are passionate about doing what you're doing. And I will say this, though, as you get older, I know I'm 55, so I'm tired, right? I don't necessarily want to get out of my couch and put on makeup and go out somewhere. But then once you get there, you're like, yeah, this is what I want to do. Like, I love it. And then there is an energy, like we go back to the in-person thing. When you're talking to like-minded creatives, actors, directors, producers, whoever, that energy, that passion, that joie de vivre, right? That want to create and tell stories is infectious. And you walk away going, yeah, all right, what can I do now? So yeah, I think that, I don't know if that's words of wisdom, but that's what I would say.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and thank you, Cynthia, for being my guest this week. Thank you so much for sharing your story with me and with my listeners. Now, speaking of listeners, if you are paying attention to the number of episodes I have done, you will notice Cynthia's episode, the one you just listened to, was episode 99, meaning that the next one is a big one, episode 100. Holy crow. Now, you may ask, Janet, are you doing something special for your 100th episode? Oh, baby, am I ever. If you're not following on Instagram, head on over, go to @SecondActActors on Instagram, where I will be showing, letting you know, notifying, posting, whatever, the really exciting, juicy stuff I have planned for 100th episode celebration. My 100th episode guest is a big one, but I also have a little something up my sleeve. So you'll have to go over to Instagram, follow @SecondActActors, and you will see what I have in store for 100th episode. I can't believe it. I hope you will tune in next week for 100th episode of Second Act Actors. Bye.